Hi, everyone. This is Miranda with the Valuable Voices podcast. I'm really excited for you guys to meet Mimika Cooney. Thank you for being on today.
Well, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. I always love to have a chat conversation about women and mindset and all things fun, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I'd love to kind of just dive in and hear, how you grew up, what brought you to mindset. So, yeah, just kind of tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. Well, I'm originally born and raised in South Africa, but I've been living in the USA since 2006. I'm still married to my high school sweetheart 27 years later. We have 3 kids, two young adults and 1 teenager. We're entering that fun 13-year-old stage, and it's fabulous. But yeah, I mean, what I'm excited about and why I love to share my story is I was at the classic performance perfectionist, always jumping through the hoops, trying to do all the things until the wheels fell off the bus. So, going back, if we had to reverse, like being born and raised in South Africa, we have a little bit of a different mentality where you have to be a bit tough because the environment we were living in was not guaranteed. Political instability was the norm. So back in 95, when the internet first came out, my husband and I were like, whoa, this is going to change the world, right? And it did. So we were so right. But the opportunities in South Africa were very limited, and we were really had this vision of wanting to do things on a bigger scale. So we actually moved to England. So at the time I had a 2-year-old, was pregnant with my second, and we moved country in winter. Wow. And we got arrived and we're like, oh my gosh, what have we done? All of those. Okay, God, did I hear you right? You've given me this vision of all the things, but he didn't tell me back then how long it would take. Like FYI, it takes 10 times longer than you think.
Right.
But anyway, there's always the seasons we go through in that process. And then eventually 5 years after being in England, we moved to the USA because my husband's internet business was getting more clients here. So we went through 7 years of paperwork and legality and the legal system and green cards and all the loops and the hoops we had to go through. So, so now we are settled here. But in that process, both my husband and I have been always entrepreneurial. So we've always made between the two of us, we've had 3 businesses. And, I was always doing the things, always the next thing, the high performer, always trying to be perfect and always say I've had my membership to Control Freaks Anonymous. And since I gave that up, I'm so much happier because now I feel like I don't have to be all the things.
Yeah.
But God had to really challenge me on that because I was like, I have to have the blueprint and the list, and I need to know exactly where we're going, and I need to know the whole plan before I even take a step of faith. So he's like, honey, that's not how it works. Like, you take one step. So of course, to say I had a bit of an attitude with God, always second guessing and questioning him. And he's like, insert eye roll, here we go again. But suffices to say, I'm in my mid-40s now, and I've learned a thing or two that sometimes it's not worth arguing with God when he wants to move you along and when he says it's time to move and leave the old. And my husband and I are the classic examples of totally burning the ships. Sold the house, the car. We even donated, gave dogs to our friends who would raise them for us. Start all over again, not once, but twice in 2 years. So sometimes, the crazy ideas require crazy faith. But, throughout this whole process, if I look back, I probably spent about 12 years just going, pushing until I literally hit burnout and breakdown. We all think we're just superhuman, super mom and multitask, and we can do all the things and it's fine when you're working on adrenaline until your body goes, no, that's not going to work anymore. So I would say I celebrated my 40th birthday, depressed and crying and like, oh my God, what am I doing with myself? That whole midlife crisis thing is real. But what I'd realized is, I had always been doing the things, the expectation of what society expects you to be, the good wife, the good mother, the perfect mom, the entrepreneurial, making money and doing this and leading. But I kind of forget to fill my own cup until I ran out of gas. So for me, the whole, I call it the straw that broke the camel's back was within the space of 6 weeks, I had a business launch that tanked and didn't do well. Then I had a child with a mental health crisis where I realized I had to pull him out of school. We had to have medical intervention and, things were serious. And then a few weeks after that, my mother-in-law passed away from cancer. Now, she was a really strong woman of faith. And, I'd known the family since I was as a teenager. And for me, it was like a huge question, like, well, God, you've had all these promises that she'd be well and she'd be healed. Like, what is this?
Right.
So to say I sulked with God and was like, I'm not talking to you. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. It was really like I had to really dive into what is it I believed about myself.
Right.
And physically, like I have never felt grief and physical burnout like that before, where you literally feel like you've been in a punching ring, where your body aches. Like I couldn't even hold a conversation. My mom would be like, can I call you? And I'm like, I can't even talk. I just need to text you. Otherwise I just, no. But I'd realized I'd pushed myself beyond myself. And it was almost like God was allowing me to get to the bottom of the barrel in order for me to stop and to listen, to say, actually, this isn't what I want for life. And this is what isn't God's plan for me to be working and living in this kind of situation. So, I spent like 18 months really seeking the Lord and just going through inner healing and resting, which for me, a go-getter, to sit on my hands and do nothing. And I, bless all the stay-at-home moms there. I just know that I cannot just be at home doing the laundry and the kids. I'm like, I'll be honest, it drove me crazy. Like, I was like, are we seriously doing this again today? Can't we do something more fun? And he's like, no, you're going to fold the laundry with a good attitude. And I was like,
and you're going to be grateful for it.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, you're complaining, we're going to do it again. And I'd be like, having a sulk, right? So he'd have to take me right back to being faithful in the little things.
Yeah.
And took me back to kindergarten in terms of how to trust him.
Wow.
And at that process, he's like, okay, enough with this pity party. I'm tired of you feeling sorry for yourself. You need to go and do something that's going to help others. So I volunteered at my local church. I have a TV production background. And so I was helping them with their online systems. And I had a boss or a leader who was half my age. Talk about a humbling experience. So God was, taking me through all the process of things that I needed to learn on fast forward, because I'd spent so many years in denial. And that's the thing I'd realized, that I'd been praying for breakthroughs of things, and God help me this. And he's like, you haven't done the last thing I asked you to do. How about before you ask me for something new, you do what I asked you to do the last time? Just like us as parents, like go and make your bread and brush your bed and brush your teeth. I'm not going to give you something until you've been faithful for the little. So God works the same way, but yet we fight him. We want to remain and think we all knowing, I'm just going to do whatever. So this whole process of this, burning the ships and just letting go of the old is painful, but it's necessary if we want to step into the new. So, through that process, I've been a journalist since I was a kid and always writing down things. And I was journaling this whole process, all my complaints and experiences. And God's like, now I want you to share that in the book. And I'm like, excuse me, say what? Huh? Nobody's going to know about my junk and my drunk, because of course I have this perfect veneer, right? Everyone thinks I'm perfect. Right. Why would I want them to know that? And he's like, no, you're going to do this. I was like kicking and screaming. But eventually I'd realized, he very clearly said to me, you ask the answer to someone else's prayers. Someone else is praying for a breakthrough, and you hold that within your hand, and you not sharing is being selfish. So just get over yourself, put yourself out there and start to share. You will be surprised how your testimony, like the blood of the lamb and the word of the testimony, breaks through other people's barriers, and you help to pioneer a path to speak into the lives of others. And spiritually, we have a responsibility to do that. But of course, we get the fear of man and what this person's going to think. And, oh my gosh, I'm going to look like an idiot. And I'm just like, whatever. Now I'm just going to say it. And either you like me or you don't. I know I talk fast and I'm at 100 miles an hour. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but that's cool. God still loves me. Yeah, that's fine. Like, you do you, boo. I'm going to do me, but I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to please the people. Yeah. So anyway, suffice it to say, I did write the book, and in 2018, it came out, Warrior to Warrior, a mother's journey from fear to faith. And it literally was my personal testimony of fighting spiritually, mentally, physically for my own healing, as well as my child's. Like, there was some major deep spiritual warfare that I had to learn, putting all the faith, all those years of being in church, I had to put that in practice. Yeah. And that really, for me, it was like God was always wanting to give me what were the desires of my heart. I mean, I remember being a 9-year-old writing, saying, one day I want to write books and stories for people. Yeah. And he's like, remember that idea you had when you were little? I'm going to bring that true. But you've been so stuck on the path of do the business thing or do the studies, and like or constantly learning, thinking I'm lacking something because I don't have the knowledge, or feeling like, even I didn't go to college in South Africa because the year I graduated in 94 was the year that we were having civil unrest, on the brink of civil war, when Mandela came into power. And there was this huge fear, and then they closed down the colleges. There was a sense of lack of hope in the country, and people were leaving in droves. So for me, I knew it just wasn't the time, and I didn't get to go to the traditional model of college, but I did the life college, right? Yeah. But it took me years to admit that I felt like I was missing something, or I was less than because I didn't have that college degree. But in the process, God showed me, he says, you don't have to do the thing that society says is the thing to do. You can learn through other ways. And as I look back, I realized I was really hard on myself because I felt like I wasn't living up to these expectations of what was expected. And I realized when I got myself sucked into that path of following the corporate grind or the tick the boxes and do the perfect thing, I was like, I finally arrived at a place and I didn't want to be there. It's like, ew, I don't actually want, why am I in this room? And I remember being in a business meeting and thinking, I shouldn't be here. This is not my people. This is not my place. I have fought so hard to be here. And I'm like, ew and ew. Like, no. And I'd realized that it was like, what is it that I really want? And it took a hot minute for me to figure that out, because sometimes we bury our desires so far down. Oh, what? I could never do that. I was like a kid when I thought about that. It's like, no, God planted those ideas for you for a reason. But not many of us are brave enough to follow the seeds of the path that will take us to where he wants us to be. But it's okay. Doesn't matter. He still uses everything.
Yeah.
So long story short, through that whole process, after I gave up trying to be a control freak and eventually just got back to the heart of what God put on me, I've realized as I've stepped into really being the person I want to be, nothing I've learned has been wasted. Everything is coming, like, it's almost like a connect the dots season where everything I've learned in business and marketing and things have now become full season, that now, I'm a full-time author. I'm writing, I've just published book 10 and book 11 is coming out at the end of the year.
Wow.
I'm like a machine now because I realized this formula. I realized what works. It took me 5 years to write the first one, and now it takes me 3 weeks to write a book when I have an idea. But I'd realized I had to learn the process. So and this has been about a 7-year journey to really get to the stage where I just relented my need for control and just allowed God to use me however but now what I find is so funny is that sometimes I wake up and go, this is too easy. This can't be, this is way too, like, what? This gotta be harder than this, because I'm so used to the hard, right? And he's like, no, this is what flow and working in the spirit is about. So, that was, I'd written a few books before that in the business section, but I would say the last 5 have been really focused on teaching, like just sharing my experience. The one that's recently come out is called Unstick Your Mind, Shift Your Mindset, Develop Grit, and Break Barriers. Now that took 3 years of research, interviewing professors and looking at, I really got fascinated, like, what is going on up here? Like, I know that, we have the spiritual side, but we also have the physiological side of how our brain works. So I dove into neuroscience, got reschooled into being a leadership and leadership coach, and really as a brain health coach as well. I'm almost finished with that, and I'm just fascinated how God's made our body, our brain, and that there is a lot of sense to it. And now, what gets me so excited now in the field of neuroscience is I think Christians have been fearful of science and a lot of these things because they think it's either worldly. Or in some cases, the world has turned it into this new age feel, which is kind of, again, the enemy changing things that shouldn't be, it's God's element of design of how our brain works, right?
Yes.
So I spent 3 years really researching this. And so I'm really excited. I'd say this would be my signature body of work that it's taken me this long to come to share about, that now I have this focus of, I know what my mission is. Like, I've stopped fighting God to take over the steering wheel, and I'm just sitting in the back seat going, la, 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 la. And it's so much more fun.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. I love hearing that. And I'm nodding the whole time and just agreeing, because been there, done that, feeling like people pleaser, control freak, not doing what God's telling you to do, feeling like you can take the wheel. And I just know so many people can relate to that. So what a journey. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love that. So tell us where to find you, where to find your books, and what you're kind of doing on a daily basis now with all that.
Yes. Well, as I said, I'm a full-time author, but also what I do is I do speaking and training workshops. I do have a signature course that I've developed over the last 5 years too. It's all under the Unstick Your Mind brand. So if you go to unstickyourmind.com, you can hear more about it. So we have the book, and then we have the course, which is a support. The whole idea is to help you walk through a process, because nothing is done in isolation. We need help and support. And mine, I've stood my ground with sticking with, you can't take God out of our lives. You have the spirit, we have our soul, which is our mind, will, and emotions, and our body. And we go to gym for our body. We cut out the sugar for our diet, but we forget about how to, maintain our mind. So
Yeah.
I've spent the time and, from a neuroscience perspective, from a sports psychology perspective, from a coaching and leadership, what this looks like to put this into practice. So if anyone is interested in taking the course, they can go to unstickyourmind.com. But I also have a bunch of goodies on my website at mimikacooney.com, which is MIMIKACOONEY.com. You can see there I have my own YouTube channel, and I regularly put out, encouraging content. You can see a list of my books, and there's a bunch of freebies like downloads, and I actually have a free book, the first series in my mindset. It's called Mindset Makeover. So as I said, just connect with me online. I'm everywhere on social media as Mimika Cooney, and I'd love to hear from them. Just let me know you heard me on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Thank you so much for being on again. I've been watching you for a little while now. Super grateful for you to take the time and connect with us. I love just, again, your vulnerability, because that's how people relate. It's like, yes, been there, done that, still feeling stuck and not sure what to do. So go to her website, reach out, we'll put all the notes down there. Thank you so much for your time today, and God bless. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mimika.
You're welcome.